Attention parents and coaches. Do you wish you had a safe social media platform for your youth athletes? Fortunately for you, there's a revolutionary new app that helps with just that. Introducing Small Player, Big Play. Small Player Big Play app provides young athletes, parents, and coaches a user-friendly sports social media platform. The app allows users to connect with friends, make new friends, create groups, text, chat, and post pictures and videos of you and your teammates participating in your favorite sport or activity. To begin, users can simply download and sign up for the app using an email account. Younger users have the ability to sign up using their smartphone and a parent's email address. From there, users can begin to interact and engage with other users of the app. Small Player Big Play app also gives users the ability to live stream full games and events. You can live stream your event so that friends, family, or anyone in the world can see you in action. Users can also share posts from the app to their other social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. What are you waiting for? Get in the game and share your love of sports with the world. Download the Small Player Big Play app today.
Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011,
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
with a focus on football.
Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. Mahomes takes the snap. He's just going to throw it long for Demarcus Robinson. It is going to use up all the time. The game is over, and the Chiefs' kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting across from me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We've been on a bit of a break from this show, but it's good to be here, even though I don't know how much NFL I want to talk about tonight.
Yeah, you and I are in opposite directions at the moment, which is the first time I can maybe say this in about 20 years.
I was going to say, it hasn't happened often in the life of the show, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, we are, as crazy as this is, we're almost at our 10-year anniversary.
Oof. Wow.
Which is hard to fathom. I mean, I remember when this started, and obviously we're going to talk about this in about 2.5 months when I may be changing our intro. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be changed. Whether it's the Chiefs again, I don't know. We'll find out in a little bit, about 2.5 months. But that's going to also be very close to the time when we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And, the Dolphins have not been good while I've been doing this show. We started this, so the first football season we would have talked about was the fall of 2011, and Miami hasn't won the division since 2008.
All right. Which was okay because the Phillies won the not Super Bowl. If the Phillies won the Super Bowl, that would have been amazing.
Impressive, yeah.
Phillies won the World Series that year.
Yes. Now, Miami's been in the playoffs once during the lifetime of this show.
Yes, I believe they...
Like 2016, I think, maybe, when they snuck in a wild card, but... the quarterback had gotten injured because Tannehill got injured, and Matt Moore was the quarterback. They lost to Pittsburgh. So it's been a little bit of a hot minute for my Dolphins to look like a professional football team. So I am very excited and living it up right now because they look like the real deal. It's not like a fake. Like, they look good. They look like a top 10 team right now.
Right, absolutely.
And that makes me feel very happy, especially because they're young, and this is a year before people thought they could possibly challenge, and all of this belongs right at the feet of Brian Flores, who
Yes.
Justin and I both were very encouraged by the hiring nearly 2 years ago.
Yes.
And despite the offseason and the hyperbole from the media during
Which
the
I
beginning
didn't
of
get.
2019, Miami is exactly where they need to be, and they're doing it earlier than people expected.
And like I might be cutting you off here. They're not even ruining their own draft. Well,
They're ruining
they're
their
not
own
ruining
draft.
their draft this year
Right.
because they have another terrible team's picks. So
Right, so they have an opportunity to still pick in the top 10 thanks to the Houston Texans and Bill O'Brien, who has been dismissed by the Texans now a few weeks ago. But every time the Texans lose, it's good for me.
yeah,
While I didn't want Bob to lose
No,
his job,
no.
it helped because it's not just first round; it's second round too.
Right.
And Miami, with the way
So
they're
you're looking
playing
at
now,
possibly 2 extra top 40 picks.
right? And using 4 picks in the top 60 in the spring, plus another year of free agency, depending on what Miami's able to do and the growth of Tua and another offseason. With hopefully it will be a full offseason because think of all the teams that are going through this without having
Right.
mini camps, full training camp,
Right.
and
Well-
all the weirdness surrounding the pandemic. It's interesting time for sure.
Yeah.
But-
yeah.
So yeah, welcome back. We've been gone since I think July. Now, I mean, we've been doing podcasts, but we were on the Bulldog Hour, focusing on the Wilson Bulldog football team here in West Lawn, Pennsylvania. And we got a good, lucky 13 episodes of the show, 6th season. It was a weird year again because of COVID. Wilson went 6-1, but did not make the playoff field, and we're not going to get into all that. If you're interested in that, check out bulldoghour.com or watch and listen to those shows. We wrapped up 2 weeks ago. We kind of did a 2020 exit interview with head coach Doug Doms. So definitely check that out if you are a Wilson alum or fan. But we're back here with episode 315, talking NFL. We're in week 10 of the 2020 season. And I think my biggest takeaway so far, looking at more of a macro level rather than focusing on my Dolphins, which I love to do, and we'll talk more about them. I think the biggest takeaway right now, and this may not be 100% accurate, but I feel as though, it's easier to say because the team that probably cast this aside didn't play. I don't know if there's a dominant team that you can point to and say they are absolutely going to win the Super Bowl.
Right. No, I would agree with that. And I feel like it honestly feels that way in both conferences as well. And not necessarily equal in both conferences. But I feel like if you look at the NFC, there are some good teams, but there's not a team where I'm like, you know what? That's the team I'm picking to win the NFC. And when I look at the AFC, there's a couple teams that are worthy of that. But, like, again, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's a couple that could do it, but there's not a runaway where you're like, oh, this team is head and shoulders above everyone else in the conference. And so without that, I can't take that a step further and say that one of them is favored to win the Super Bowl. There are a couple that are putting themselves clearly in that field of contenders, but there are others in that field of contenders right now.
So, real quick, put you on the hot seat,
Okay.
and then I can go first if you want me to. It doesn't matter. Give me your. I think I know who your 2 AFC are, but who are your 2 AFC and 2 NFC teams that right now you think would be playing in the respective conference
All right,
championship
how about I
games?
give you my AFC, and then we'll throw it to you for your AFC.
Okay.
That'll give me a moment to catch my
about-
breath and think about my
Okay.
AFC.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, my 2 in the NFC or in the AFC, sorry, are going to be the Steelers at 9-0 and the Chiefs. I think and this is huge. The Steelers are undefeated right now, so they technically are the 1 seed, which is big because there's only 1 bye as of right now. Look,
Right.
I don't mean that as it's changing. I know, like, there are contingencies based on if games don't get played and things like that, but you would have to see a massive trend in that direction over the last 7 weeks of the season for something to impact
Right.
the playoffs. But I think the contingency is to add more playoff teams Like there's a plan out there where they could expand
Right.
if needed because of crazy scheduling issues. But if you saw Schefter's tweet this morning, of the Week 10 round of tests, there were no positives,
Yeah,
which is a good thing. Now, I don't think that includes people who are out currently for being out for COVID stuff.
Right, exactly.
But like that's
Asterisk.
right. There are no new positives, which is what you're looking for.
No new
so
positive
anyway.
is a positive.
Right, yeah. It reminds me of The Office when Michael Scott gets really upset when Kevin's test comes back negative, and he's like, "No, we'll fight this." He's like, "He can't switch those. If he switched those in the real world, things would be chaos." But like the Steelers are there. It is interesting when you look at the Steelers. Now they had a dominant win today, but the dominant win against the Bengals. But like they've let some teams hang around in ways that they shouldn't. They handled their business today, don't get me wrong. Their offense, when Ben is back there, their offense can be very good, but like I don't know, they got lucky kind of against the Ravens the first time. The Ravens let them hang around because of the Ravens' mistakes. It wasn't the Steelers' offense that really kind of did their job in that one. They let the Eagles hang around. They let
Yep.
they've
No,
only
you're not
handled their
wrong.
business
You're
in a
not
few
wrong.
games. Now, that being said, they're 9-0. The only time the Steelers have ever been 9-0, which is absurd. Like, that's kind of crazy. I mean, 9-0 is really difficult, but a franchise like the Steelers, it kind of surprises me that they didn't have a team go 8-0 or 9-0 something
9-0,
before.
No, I'm right there with you.
And the
So-
Chiefs, I'm kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it that they're not there. You know, like, they've, in theory, got more weapons now. With Mahomes there, man, he's so good. And then you go and you look at their defense, and their defense reminds me a lot of the Colts with Peyton Manning like style, where they've got some playmakers there. They'll get exposed a little bit, but they're also going to get exposed because teams are just lying back and chucking it all the time against them. So I mean, those are my two in the AFC, and I think they're in that top class. And then I think it's a step down, and then you've got some other contenders, but those two are that's who I expect to be the 1 and 2 seed to have a path towards meeting in the AFC Championship game to play to go to the Super Bowl.
No, I'm right there with you. Those are my two. And the Chiefs are the ones I was alluding to. I'm not trying to discredit what the Steelers have done, but you kind of touched on it. Their wins, win is a win. Doesn't matter if it's by a point or 70 points. They haven't exactly been dominating, and you can say, well, the Chiefs have won pretty convincingly most of the time. They had one hiccup against the Raiders. I still favor the Chiefs, but like you said, Pittsburgh's got that home field, and that's a tough place to play, especially if it's in January.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how the next 7 games go for the Steelers and however many the Chiefs
It's also
have
interesting
left.
because the Steelers have already had their bye because of
Right, because of
the
COVID,
COVID
the
issues,
earlier
which
COVID
were
issues.
unrelated to their
The
COVID
Chiefs are on a bye this week,
Right.
so they're. I guess they'll both have 7 games left to play. 9-0 and 8-1.
And in a week and a half, Thanksgiving night, we get Ravens at Steelers, which is
It's going to be a
that's
good
an
one.
awesome 8:30
Yep.
or 8 o'clock or whatever it'll be game on Thanksgiving night.
So
Yes.
I feel like those two teams in the AFC are above and beyond everyone else. The next rung is probably a combination of Buffalo, Indianapolis, Tennessee, and then maybe Cleveland and Miami. Am I missing anyone? Did I miss anyone? Because I guess the Raiders. You could throw the Raiders in there as one.
I
of
would
those
put the
teams
Ravens
that-
in there, especially depending on what they do.
You're right.
tonight.
I know. I did completely miss the Ravens. No, you're right. They should be. Ravens and Bills are my next
Right.
tier.
Right.
Buffalo and Baltimore next. Then the teams that I
The
mentioned.
Ravens
are,
are
kind
a
of right there
really
behind.
intriguing team to me too, because if they can get the ground game going and if they jump up on you, it's gonna be tough to beat them. You know, like
Right.
now, at the same time, if you jump up on them, it's gonna be tough. And the thing about the Chiefs is that like they've been there. Like they were down 24 points
Right.
to the Texans last year. And then just flip of a switch, come back and beat them. And then they do almost the same thing against the Titans, who were steamrolling teams at that point.
Yeah.
And then they flip the switch and they just get it. And that's where I mean, too, like, where you look at the defense, and I know that was last year versus this year, but, like, there are moments that defense can play. There are stretches of games where that defense can play amazing. And that's when you have an offense as good as the Chiefs, you don't necessarily need 60 minutes of great football from your defense. First of all, they won't be out there 60 minutes. But, like, if they only blow up on 1 or 2 possessions and they hold their own the rest of the game, when you've got Patrick Mahomes back there and all those weapons and Andy Reid and Bieniemy calling plays, like, that's more than good enough. Like,
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There are other matchups I'd love to see too, and I'm not wishing away the rest of the season, but I want to see Chiefs against Steelers. Like, I want that. Like,
Oh yeah, no.
man, that would be a fun one. But yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on the AFC so far.
All right, so I'll take the reins here with the NFC.
I feel like this one's a lot harder.
Well, I think there's more teams that maybe they're not quite on the same
Right.
level as the
So,
Chiefs
like,
and Steelers.
I feel like
but
there might not be anybody in that top tier. Like, I
Right.
feel like it might be
I think
empty,
the-
but there might be more
that-
teams in that
that
like,
A tier, you're talking
Yes.
Chiefs and Steelers. That B tier, you're probably talking Ravens, Bills in the AFC.
yeah,
Probably.
yes,
But then in the NFC, I think there's like 5 teams in that.
right.
that
That's
group.
kind of where I am.
If I have to pick just two, like who I think's going to play in the NFC Championship game, of course, maybe some developments from the games
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
will change things, but I want to lean Saints-Packers,
Yeah,
which is quite possibly tough to do and maybe crazy to some people that I'm not picking the Bucks, but they just got housed by the Saints a couple
for the
weeks ago.
second time.
Like, I mean, yeah, right. Fool me once,
Right.
but you're destroyed now the second time. Now maybe they get the best of them a third time. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm willing to take that bet.
Right.
And I know the Packers have been weird recently. They started really hot and they were destroying our expectations because both of us were not on the Packers bandwagon this year.
Right. But they also, man.
So, but I feel like they're all in the same area.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the Buccaneers beat up on the Packers pretty good.
Yeah.
But the Saints beat up on the Bucks now twice.
Right.
The Saints and Packers play this year? Did they play this
They
year?
probably will play this year.
I'm trying to think. I don't know.
Because if the divisions
are.
are playing, they would play.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I feel like those are the first 3 that jump to my mind. And I'm going to lean Saints Packers right now.
Okay.
Obviously, the Bucks are there. The Seahawks, we thought, like, they were kind of my favorite
Yeah.
up until the last couple weeks.
Right. Like,
They've
through
really-
October, even.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
they would have been, I feel like they could have been a team in that A category. Their defense is historically bad.
Which is crazy to think where they've fallen in
Right,
just 5
right.
years, what they had been,
Right.
how good they were, just,
and
5
the
years
offense
ago.
has come back to earth the last few weeks. Now I know they're running just guys in at running back, but like the offensive line today, oh my gosh, like they looked like the Eagles line at times. Guys were just running right through and hitting Russell Wilson, who that's his thing. Like he doesn't get hit, like he avoids those hits. Well, he was getting hit today.
Yeah.
And not necessarily his own fault. Like that's just the way it goes. But
How nuts is the NFC West, though? 3
Yeah.
teams are 6-3, and the 49ers are 4-6.
right. And
So-
we're in a game with the Packers or with the Saints today, with a chance to make it, to go to 500. Like,
So NFC West is interesting, but again, like I feel like I still think even the last 2 weeks, notwithstanding, I still think the Seahawks are in that B group.
I agree.
I just are the Rams there to me though. I don't know. I feel like they're in the next.
they won
tier.
today.
They won today. Yep, they won today. Kudos
In
to
a
them.
game where neither quarterback threw a touchdown pass. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL.
And I think the Cardinals are there too.
Yeah.
I think they're very close to like the BC line.
Yes.
The Rams
yes.
are more in the C. Cardinals are closer to B.
Yeah.
And I think they're hanging right there, very close to breaking through. But
Wow, what a game today.
they maybe could have, should have, would have beat the Dolphins last week, and they, at times, you felt should have beaten the Bills, And then they miraculously do beat the Bills,
Right,
which
right.
I'll try to show that here in a moment.
But they've had a number of games like that this year. They've had a number of games where it's like, what the heck was that all about? One way or the other. Like, man, like I didn't see that coming. Yeah, but it's funny because I find myself like they're an exciting team to watch. Kyler Murray is exciting to watch with the weapons he has. Whew, it's exciting to watch them.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So, why don't we do this, since this is our first show since we finished our predictions, why don't we just kind of run through if a team is exceeding, meeting, or failing to meet our personal expectations from where we were predicting back in like June and July.
Okay.
So I'm going to go in order of the games this week. So we're going to talk Thursday night first. Colts-Titans, this one was a bit of a surprise, I think, to most people, judging by the picks in the weekly pool that I run. 21 out of 22 people pick the Titans to win. Remember, at one time, I believe this team was 5-0. They are now 6-3 after a loss to the Colts Thursday night, 34-17. What's going on with Tennessee? Well, I think both these teams are pretty... Maybe they actually, honestly, may be exceeding expectations that both of us had entering the year.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, but I think we both had these teams and Houston all competing for the top line.
I think I had Houston
a weaker
falling
AFC.
off. I think I had Houston falling off a little bit, but I think I'd say they're both kind of about where we thought. Like, for me, I think anyway. Like, I think I had the Colts winning the division because I'm a Frank Reich believer, and I think the Titans, I had them like still good, but back to earth a little bit. And I feel like that's where they are right now. Right now, as we speak, I feel like they're the best teams. Houston is, the wheels have come off there. And it's going to be interesting because you have guys like J.J. Watt. And I don't blame him, you know, especially when you're asked the question like, oh, are you here for a rebuild? And he's like, no, I'm here to win. Like, what do you want him to say? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's one of those where you get an honest answer from an athlete and then it becomes a headline. Like, what do you want him to say? Yeah, I don't expect a win for the next few years while we rebuild. Like, no, like, that's not, you know. So, I don't blame him for that answer at all. Like, but, and that's not a quick fix. And I know people talk about, like, certain, like, people, oh, like, would Bieniemy want to go there? Or would Dabo want to go there, or like things like that, and I'm like, what? Like, I know you have the quarterback there, but you don't have a whole lot else in terms of like the things coaches are typically looking for when they're going somewhere. So I don't think that's as clear cut as a oh, you take this job as it was when Bill O'Brien took that job. I remember saying, like, before he left Penn State, I was saying, I'm like, that's the job that scares me because they had everything. They had the high pick where they were going to be able to pick whatever quarterback they wanted. Like, there were so many things, and I'm like, that's the job. That's the job that O'Brien's going to leave for because it just set up too perfect, and that's the job he left for. I don't view that job like that right now. I know they have some of the pieces, but I feel like you can go somewhere else, like, you know, there are a few teams that are going to have close to $100 million in cap space.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and high draft picks.
Like the Eagles.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, opposite
I didn't
of that.
mean, I meant the money, not the draft pick. You squeezed that in before I was ready. All right, so
the Eagles by record should get a high draft pick, but they're going to win the division and get like bumped way down.
Yeah, right. The keeper of the picks has spoken. My uncle tuning in. I reminded him that we were back live this week, and he's not disappointing. Justin had the Colts first, the Titans second. I had the Colts second and Titans third. I had Houston winning the division, so I'm definitely off on that. I swung and a miss on the Texans, but we were both have Colts over Titans. So in terms of that,
right,
we're right on. Now they're both 6-3. They're both contending. I don't know what to say. Do I think both teams make the playoffs? Maybe with the expanded field.
I think so. I think
they both can. But to me,
and I don't know that the Colts are that much better than the Titans. I feel like the Titans are kind of in a spot where the Seahawks are right now. I know they're very different teams, but like, I don't think they're as good as the first maybe month and a half of the season, and I don't think they're as bad as the last 3 weeks of the season. You know what I mean? Like they're somewhere in between, and I feel like there's enough time left that the Titans are going to get right, and I think they're going to make the playoffs. And with Derrick Henry, I don't know that's a
Right.
team you necessarily want to face.
It's a team built for a lot of January
if the
games.
Titans are getting right come playoff time, I feel like it could be a lot like last year, where like they're a team you don't necessarily want to play. And AJ Brown's coming along at wide receiver, and like, yeah, so like I wouldn't count them out.
Yeah,
But
AJ Brown and Corey Davis.
right, but same thing. Like if Phillip Rivers doesn't turn the ball over, and the Colts defense is healthy, and they get contributions from Naeem Hines and just patch it together in the backfield,
Yeah,
like
Taylor, Wilkins, and Hines.
Right.
Like they have a good trio at running
yeah,
back.
yeah. So like the Colts are no joke either. Like
Oh, and Marlon Mack's injured and out for the year. Like
Yeah.
that forced him back there in the
Yeah.
backfield when healthy. Wow. Yeah. So honestly, I'd say probably then they're both maybe meeting your expectations.
Yeah.
Probably pretty close to mine too. Although I think possibly the Colts or Titans are exceeding expectations, probably just by a little bit for me, but we were pretty close on both of them.
Yeah.
I just missed on Houston. I just completely whiffed on the Texans. You had them dropping probably to third place then.
I think third, yeah, because I wouldn't have put them below the Jags.
All right, so Tampa Bay, Carolina, the Buccaneers won today 46-23, able to light up the scoreboard again. 98-yard rushing touchdown from Ronald Jones, which is the longest in Buccaneers history, and he's now one of only 5 players with a 98-plus yard scoring touchdown.
I think Derrick Henry has 2. I think he has a
Does he have
98
2?
and a 99.
Wow.
Because watching the game, they're like, Derrick Henry's 99-yarder, and they're like, wait, they're saying Derrick Henry also has a 98-yarder? Like, they on the broadcast, they're like, wait, what? Like,
That's interesting. I knew he had one of them.
I
'cause
don't
it just
know.
happened last year, didn't it?
Right, yeah. They were just talking about it on, like, in the broadcast. So, like, they were kind of, like, fumbling their way through it. So I could have misunderstood. But, like, yeah, it was crazy.
Carolina made it interesting.
Right.
They're fighting. They just don't have enough talent to keep
So-
up with the Saints and Bucks.
This is an interesting one because despite the outcome, I'm going to say the Bucks are below my expectations and the Panthers are above my expectations. I expected the Carolina to be much worse than what they are. And I know they haven't won a lot of games.
Yeah, they're
but
3-7.
They've been competitive. The defense is okay at times. They've got a lot of young pieces. Like, I feel like the vision's clear there, what Matt Rule is trying to build, and I think they're going to be okay. It'll be interesting to see what they do long-term at quarterback, because I don't know that Teddy Bridgewater is their guy long-term. He's not the problem there, but I don't know that he's the long-term solution there.
Yeah, he might be more of a stopgap.
Right, like, I don't know. I think they're okay, and I feel like the jury's still out on the coach, which is, it sounds like we're setting the bar really low, but sometimes halfway through the first season, and sometimes you don't, and I don't think we know yet, and I think that's okay. Whereas the Bucks, I thought they were going to be more like plug and go. Like I thought and there are moments where they look like that, but they've also had more moments than I was anticipating this year where they
I'm there with
haven't
you.
looked like that.
I agree. I would say the Panthers are at a minimum meeting. They're not below. They're not worse than I thought. And despite their record, they might be slightly exceeding what I expected, their competitiveness, because they're in most of their games.
Right. They've lost a couple close games.
They're just not as good as their NFC South counterparts, especially Tampa Bay, which when they look good, they look good. But when they look bad, they look bad. Like, there's no in-between for them.
Well, like, Brady has had a couple games where he was historically bad. Like, they're like some of the worst games of his career
against
this
the
year.
Saints 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Like, god awful.
Yes.
And then you get games like you had today, which I think you had 4 passing touchdowns.
But it's like, okay, so you're playing against the Panthers today, and you do that. Like,
but they also look good against the Packers.
They did.
I don't know. I feel like the Buccaneers, I'm going to say, are meeting my expectations because I believe I had them going either 10-6 or 11-5 and winning that division.
Right.
If I recall correctly. I think. I don't know. They're not exceeding it.
Right.
I think maybe if they had beaten the Saints and were like 8-2 and looked good in that regard, maybe I could say
that's where I'd say I feel like I had such high expectations for them that like it would be tough for them to exceed them unless they were like undefeated. and they've had some stinkers, so I'm gonna put them below. And they're still good. Like they're still good. They're gonna make the playoffs, and they're a team I wouldn't want to play.
Right.
Which, funny, coming into today, I think that's how it would have matched up. Tampa coming to Philadelphia.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
That'll
talk
be
about
fun.
a bad matchup. Unless Tom Brady throws one of those stinkers, which he doesn't do that in the playoffs, so that would be wonderful.
That'd be worth it. That'd be fun. So,
although if they make them sit on the plane for 7 hours before they get there,
Right.
maybe we'd have a shot.
Texans Browns. This was a crappy game. This was awful. For anyone with fantasy players on these teams,
Oh my
including
gosh.
me and us.
Yes.
I mean, Kareem Hunt did okay for us.
all
He
right,
did enough
yeah.
for only. For
And
the
it
team
wasn't
only
him.
scoring
It wasn't
10
him that
winning.
stepped out on the one at the end of the
Right,
game.
it
so-
wasn't. So,
which, by the way, also kept them from covering.
Yep.
Like,
there was a lot of stuff that happened. Well, the Cardinals took no, not the Cardinals. Someone took a knee on their 2-point conversion. Was it the Cardinals? It was the Cardinals. Yeah, it was after their Hail Mary. They took a knee.
yeah,
Good thing we don't gamble on sports in general,
right.
because you can pull your hair out of some of these decisions. But Texans at Browns. Cleveland wins 10-7. Browns improved to 6-3. Texans dropped to 2-7. I already talked about. I had higher expectations for the Texans. They are not meeting them at all. So obviously well below expectation. Cleveland, though, you and I said like this is a team that is
And what,
built
they're like
to
6-3
be good.
now?
They're 6-3.
That's
Honestly, I say they're at a minimum meeting our expectations. I think you could possibly say exceeding as well.
right. I would be in the same boat with Cleveland because as much as we're like, it's tough because they're 3 games behind the Steelers right now.
Right.
So like they're not really in the race there, but they're in the race for a playoff spot. And we talked about how like this could be a 3-way race, like down the stretch. And I wouldn't quite say it's a 3-way race right now, but they're competitive. So I'm gonna say they're meeting our expectation because I think we both kind of had them like behind the Ravens and Steelers, but should be competitive, and they certainly are that. And I'm going to say that Houston is pretty much on par with what I was expecting.
You thought them to be that bad?
I did. I just saw it going south. Like,
Wow,
just because I feel like they've been living on the edge for so many years. Like, winning the division, but living on the edge. And, like, how long till Bob gets fired? And then they just get fired. And, like, I just don't see, like, there was all this talk. Like, Will Fuller's good.
I guess he had a touchdown streak snapped. He didn't score their
But
touchdown,
I view him as like he's like a number 2 to me. Like he's very good. I say that. He'd be a 1 on the Eagles, but he I don't know.
So this was an interesting game. Football team at Lions. Did you see this? 30-27.
Yes, I saw this.
That was a bit of
By the way,
an interesting game.
It was a very interesting game, and I was not happy because I had the Lions winning. I thought the Lions were going to win. And the Redskins continue their game-tying drive with a terrible pass interference call against the Lions.
It was pretty bad.
Terrible. Now, there was a later penalty that I didn't see a replay of, but they didn't make a big deal out of it, so I assume that was fine. Now, they still gave up the yard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the Lions had their shot, and they kept giving up yards. But then they kick a field goal. It looks like it's going to overtime. And I'm like, I don't know, Matthew Stafford, like, this is the kind of situation where I feel like he's really good in. But they did it to perfection. Now, they got the late hit call on, what's his name, the kid from Ohio State. Chase Young got 15-yard penalty. He was mad about it, but like, dude, you took like 2 full steps after Stafford released the ball and then shoved him to the ground. Like, I don't know what you were expecting. Like, that was not a bang bang play. But then the next play was the crazy one because they get up there and they've got like a timeout, but only like 6 seconds, and they're playing off the wide receivers, which I get because they don't want to give up a big play, but at the same time, like, they're not throwing to the end zone.
Right.
They're setting up for a field goal. So instead of it being like a 6-yarder, maybe not quite that much, they get 6 yards.
It's a 59-yarder,
right? Instead of running into the defender and trying to get a few more yards, the receiver caught it, got 6 yards, and just went down. And they called timeout with 2 seconds left. If he doesn't do that,
Time probably runs
time
out.
runs out. So like he did exactly the right thing. And
Just like Nick
59 yarder, and he needed all 59. It went just over the crossbar, and they won.
Prater, right?
Yeah, Prater, who's had his struggles this year, he hit 2 50-plus yard field goals today, and you win by 3.
So 30-27, the Lions get the win over football team.
Yeah.
Alex Smith doing his best to will the
he did his
Washington
part.
football team to win. He had almost 400 yards passing. His first start, I believe, in over 2 years.
Yeah,
or close to 2
700
years.
some days they posted this morning.
So, yeah.
I'm gonna.
Where are we with the
I would-
Lions and the Redskins?
Lions,
Excuse
I'd
me,
say-
the Washington football
Lions
team.
are slightly above my expectations. I thought they'd be worse. And Washington, I'd say, is pretty much on par. I expected them to be pretty bad, and they are. I still think Ron Rivera will eventually get it right there.
He's had a lot going on in addition to the global and
Yeah.
local stuff and the team stuff, the program stuff.
The thing he's
health issues.
doesn't have going for him is that his owner probably won't be able to get out of the way, because I feel like he hasn't been in the way much this year because he's just tried to stay out of the picture of lots of things. But I feel like it's only a matter of time till his owner steps in and screws things up, like, say, the off season.
So I think I'm right there with you, though. I actually think the Lions. I feel like did I end up having the Lions win that division? Well, I did not have the Packers win that division.
What about the Vikings? Did you pick the
Did I
Vikings?
pick the? Now I'm just second guessing myself, but
Right.
I feel like I was thinking that
Maybe you did pick the Lions.
I don't know. They're at best meeting my expectations, I think, but
Yeah.
they might be below my expectations.
What's their record now?
4 and 5. I think
Okay.
4 and 5.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And they should have won week 1. Like they should. Like they're.
was that the
they're-
one DeAndre Swift dropped
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Well, he's picked it up. He's
yeah,
playing
no,
like
he
an
looks
NFL.
good.
Right,
He
he's
looks
playing like
good.
an NFL player today. Whew. You see that run where he ran a guy over on the way to the
Yeah.
end zone? Man.
Yeah, so football team, Washington is 2 and 7. Lions are 4 and 5. Say Washington's about where we expected them to be.
Yeah.
Like you said, Detroit is at best meeting,
Yeah.
but I think could even be below
Okay.
for me. But like you said, a game or two, and all of a sudden 4 and 5 turns into 6 and 3, and you're feeling pretty good.
Right.
But nope, not having it. So getting some updates from my uncle. I just had the game up here for a bit, but Ravens and Patriots are tied 7-7.
Okay.
Nope. So he does correct me, as I could not remember the NFC North whatsoever. He says that we both picked the Lions last
Okay.
in the division.
Okay.
So then I would say they are probably exceeding expectations.
Yes,
And
yes.
That must have been 2 years ago then, because I feel like I picked Detroit to win that division recently. And
So
I was
it
completely
must
wrong.
have been like, and I must have thought like that it was gonna fall, the wheels fall off with Patricia and get fired, like, which could still happen, but like,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
still
feel like
7 games to
I feel like the
go.
Lions are at that the worst thing, right? Like they're okay.
Mediocre.
They're good enough. They're gonna beat.
They're going to be like 8 and 8 again. 9 and 7 maybe.
Right. And what do you do with your quarterback? And what do you do with your head coach?
Well, you're getting closer to the end of the Stafford era.
Yeah.
Like, he's been there, 10 years?
Right. And
11 years?
you have to feel like someone would swoop in and get him in a heartbeat if they had a chance, right?
Like Phillip Rivers. Like, look what happened
Right.
with Rivers.
Right. Which, just random thing, and I sent this to you the other day. It was absurd to me that they mentioned how long he's been playing. His active streak was like 244 straight starts or whatever. He'd have to play 4.8 seasons more
Right. To tie
to
Favre.
tie Favre.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
So we picked the Lions last.
If there was a quarterback that would jump around from team to team, though, I could see Philip Rivers. Although they were talking the other night about how he wants to coach his son,
Yeah.
he's dying to coach his son.
Which
in
one?
Football. Yeah.
So we both picked the Vikings to win that division.
Okay.
Which is, isn't looking too strong at the moment.
No, looking poor.
They play tomorrow night.
Right.
They are currently 3 and 5
Yeah.
against the Bears, who are 5 and 4. So, but let's finish up here. Jaguars-Packers, this game was a lot closer than it should have been, especially because it was in Green Bay at Lambeau. Green Bay improves with a win over the Jaguars, 24-20. 7-2 are the Packers. 1-8 are the Jaguars. Now, when we did this at the beginning of the year, you had Jacksonville, I think, going 1-15.
Right, only because I didn't pick them to win a single game, but I knew that's unlikely.
Right. And we have 0 winless teams. No, that's wrong. The Jets are 0-9.
Exceeding expectations?
No, meeting expectations. Because I think we both said, but I absolutely said the Jets are the worst team in football.
Yeah.
And finally, of all the crappy picks I've made in the last few years and always bagging on the Saints and propping up the Falcons or whatever team or hating on the Packers.
This is the one you teed up. And
I was like, I'm going to knock this one out of the park. The Jets suck.
And it's great when it's a team that you actually want to be bad.
I actually don't like them.
A team you don't want to be bad. You go out and say they are going to be bad.
They are awful.
And they are worse than that.
They're worse than I thought. Honestly, they're not even meeting expectations. And my expectations were them to go like 2-14.
Think about it. You expected them to be possibly the worst team in football, and they're worse than that.
Couldn't even meet that low bar.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's fine. I don't want to bag on them too much because they play Miami another time, and if that would be their only win, I'd be so mad. It is in New York because Miami shut them out in Miami a couple weeks ago, and they go to New York in 2 weeks. The Dolphins go to Denver, I believe, this coming week, and then go to New York the following week, and then they have 3 straight home games. And I think the last one in that 3 home games is the Chiefs.
Ooh, there you go.
Who someone, I don't know if it was Ross Tucker, who we still need to get on the show, by the way, or a Pro Football Talk, or some writer somewhere said that is a sneaky good matchup.
I agree.
And I hope that's true 5 weeks from now.
Oh, man, that would be awesome.
But, so Jaguars-Packers, I guess Jaguars are meeting expectations.
I feel like are meeting expectations. Packers, I'd say, are... It's tough because I want to say meeting expectations because I had them falling off from last year, but I feel like they have fallen off from last year. I don't think they're as good. Well, I didn't think they were that good last year. I don't think they're that good this year, even though coming into today, they would have been the 1 seed in the NFC, I think. And so they might still be because they won today, and the Seahawks lost, and who else would it be?
The Saints.
Oh, yeah, I guess
They're
it could be the
7-2
Saints.
as well.
I'm going to say meet expectations, but only because I think they're good, but not that great. And that's kind of where I have them.
Honestly, I think...
I probably have to say exceeding, because I probably had them falling off more than I thought.
The Packers are definitely exceeding my expectations, because I think I had them possibly finishing third. My uncle might be able to say for sure, but we both had the Vikings in first and the Lions in last. And I feel like we both were contemplating Chicago as a wild card team. So
yeah.
So I definitely think the Packers are for sure exceeding my expectations, and they definitely were the first 5 weeks of the season. Then once they got beat up by the Bucs, things really changed. Jaguars, honestly, I don't think they're meeting my expectations. Even I didn't have them being good to begin with, but 1-8 is worse than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, see, I kind of figured they were.
You were like,
right.
I think they're going. I think you had them 0-16. You're like, I'll give them 1 or 2.
Right,
wins.
because I didn't think a team was actually going to go 0-16, which there's still a shot. But I think they're going to be historically bad, and they are. Yeah. Did you see? And I felt bad for him. Doug Marrone had to throw a challenge flag today because they said it's not pass interference because the ball was tipped.
Right.
Okay. And he had to argue, and he was correctly arguing and got it overturned. Yes, but the guy who committed the pass interference is the guy who tipped the ball. It wasn't tipped at the line.
Oh,
He's
okay.
like, he climbed over my receiver to tip the ball, and it went past. And they're like, yeah, but it was tipped. And he's like, yes, but it was tipped by the guy who committed the pass interference. They reviewed it and were like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
the pass interference happened before the tip. You're right. And it's not like these guys aren't trying. They're just bad, and that's all it is. And you can just see the exasperated look on his face of I don't know how. We're bad on our own. We don't need you to not give us this call.
Right. You're right about that. So, all right. Well, I hate to do this to you, but we got
That's
it.
right. Go ahead.
Eagles, Giants at home. get the win, 27-17. It's their first win against the Eagles since Week 9 of 2016.
Yep.
They both have identical win amounts. However, the Eagles get by with having their bye already and having a tie.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, the Eagles are still in first place.
Yes.
Followed by, I guess, the Giants, then the Redskins, or no, then the Cowboys.
Cowboys
and the
Redskins, I think, are both there.
Right there. So, just, I don't know.
So I'm going to put the Giants about what I expected. Bad.
So
but,
meeting expectations?
Yeah, I'd put them meet expectations. Eagles are below my expectations.
Far below, yeah.
Right. Like, they're a bad football team.
At this point,
they're old and decrepit at way too many positions. They need to kind of clean house. I don't mean
they're
fire.
They're young
everyone.
and not talented at others.
Yeah, so a terrible combination. When your veterans are hurt and not good, and your young guys are not good, and that's not to say that some of them won't be. Like, I think Jalen Reagor, I think he's going to be fine. Like, he's not like the issue in and of itself. The problem is, Jason Peters should have retired 2 years ago, and is like the savior supposedly at wherever we can fit him in, because we need him. It's the 8th different starting offensive line combination they've had in 9 games.
I was going to say 9 games.
You know what? In the year they went to the Super Bowl, I think they had like 2. Like, because they started like everybody, and then Jason Peters got hurt, and I think that was like it. Like, it's just it's so different. They're not very good. Like, they couldn't stop, and they were talking about this today during the game, like on the radio, talking about the game. The Giants ran the same plays that the Eagles couldn't stop 17 days ago, and the Eagles still couldn't stop it. They're like, what exactly did Jim Schwartz like do on defense? Like, what they were running Daniel Jones on on the zone read around the outside, and they did nothing. You know what it is? The Eagles have 0 talent at linebacker, like 0 ready for football now, ready for NFL talent. They're terrible, and they don't put anything into it. They don't put anything into it. Like, you get what you put into it, right? Like, we say that about a lot of different things, and the Eagles have that in a lot of positions. They don't put any value in that position, and then they get 0 production out of that position. They think they can just. They did. Lots of people were like, they need to do more to upgrade the wide receiver position. Well, and they try. And 2020 hurts because Marquise, whatever. Goodwin, like, and I'm not saying he would have been, like, the answer, but, like,
couldn't have hurt, right?
He'd be somebody, right? He's not a practice squad guy. We're just signing off off of other people's practice squad guys and dressing them with, like, no practice to run out there. Does Wentz need to be better? Yes. Is he the whole problem? No. The line needs to be a lot better. Like, I am, and again, it's tough because I'm forever indebted to some of these guys. Like, Jason Kelce will be a legend forever in Philadelphia. We need to start thinking about who's going to be our next center. Jason Peters is a Hall of Fame level, like, left tackle. He probably should be well on his way through his 5 years, like, of wait time, and he's not.
He's been with Philadelphia for what, 12 years?
A long time.
12 or 13. Because he was traded from Buffalo to Philly when I was in Indiana.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so, like, he's good, and the Eagles have some young guys who honestly came along when they had to, like, when they were forced into spots, but they were literally pulling guys. Not even off of practice squads. They were just signing guys who were out of football completely and dressing them on the line at sometimes over the last couple months.
Next, you're going to tell me they pulled a garbage man to kick for them or something.
I feel like it's only a matter of time. And so, don't get me wrong, injuries have decimated them, but injuries have decimated other teams. But they're just not getting the job done. But, like, when you watch the game, and I'm not saying, like I said, Wentz needs to be better. But when you watch the game, like today, like, what do you want him to do? Like, what do you want him to do? Like, there are times where there's just no one open, and I can't tell you how many plays during a game where it looks like the Eagles are blocking, like, a scheme for a screen pass, where there are multiple guys that just run right through the line. I don't know how that happens at the NFL level. Like, how does that happen all the time? They're just not very good. I don't think there's a lot of quick fixes. Like, Alshon Jeffrey played his first game since, like, he had his first full practice since December of last year. Like, he's just not any good. He needs to go. Deshaun Jackson, making way too much money, never plays. Get him out of there. They cut both those guys. They save, like, $18 million. They'll pay them a bunch to not play for them next year, but they'll also save $18 million in cap space, or nearly $18 million in cap space, just by cutting those two alone. So they're going to take some cap hits, but they need to cut a bunch of guys and start to rebuild, get younger. Like, yeah, you know what it feels like. It feels a lot like a few years after the Phillies World Championship when they went from competing to, like, we're super old at every position, and you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it feels like to the Eagles. Like, the players who need to be contributing aren't even on the field. That's what it is. The guys you're paying aren't even on the field. So that's frustrating. But again, I don't know what you want them to do. And it frustrates me, and I know it's a little different because of the big contract, because he's got his contract now. But, like, when, this week was dominated on some sports talk radio between Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, and I am in the boat of, like, yes, Kyler Murray looks awesome right now, but if you put Lamar Jackson in that system with those weapons out in Arizona, I'm not saying it would be exactly the same, but he'd look a lot different than he does in Baltimore with those weapons in that scheme.
Right.
And, like, so when people are making that argument, and it's the same people that I listen to say, well, Wentz just needs to make everybody better. I'm like, well, how can you sit here and be like, oh, well, Lamar Jackson isn't putting up the numbers he should because there's no help around him. And then you're like, Wentz is like, oh, because I'm like, Lamar Jackson has more weapons in theory. Like, he's not missing guys because of injuries. They're just, like, I agree with their argument for Lamar Jackson. I just disagree when they then don't use that logic to apply to other quarterbacks. But
so, speaking of one of them, Kyler Murray pulled some magic out of his hat today. So I'm going to pull it up here for those that maybe haven't seen it. If you're watching live or later, this is what happened to end the Cardinals-Bills game. Buffalo up 30-26 with 7 seconds to play. Kyler lost it to the end zone on a triple covered DeAndre Hopkins.
The defense wasn't bad. This is not a situation where, the defense didn't do what they're supposed to do.
D-Hop just out.
Right.
Reached them for the ball.
It wasn't like, a guy tipped it up or anything. He just went up and got it.
It's crazy what he was able to do.
Usually a Hail Mary only happens when somebody does something they're not supposed to do on defense. That's not the case here.
No.
Hopkins just got it.
So the Cardinals win and improve their record to 6-3, whereas the Bills fall to 7-3, which is a huge help for me as a Dolphins fan, hoping that Miami could possibly catch Buffalo for the division championship. What a crazy end of the game. I'm so mad because Buffalo took the lead with like 34 seconds to play.
Right.
And Kyler Murray and the Cardinals drive down the field and then end up winning on this Hail Mary touchdown from Murray to DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray had a rushing touchdown, and it's the 5th straight game he had a rushing touchdown, and that has not happened since the merger of the AFL and NFL.
The Super Bowl era has not happened.
So, pretty spectacular. So, where are you on the Bills and Cardinals? Honestly, I think they're both meeting my expectations.
Yeah, I'd probably say that too. Like, to be honest, I feel like the Bills are better than I was anticipating.
They might be slightly exceeding. Exceeding.
Not enough that I can confidently say they're above. So because I'm going to put them at
I feel
meet.
like neither of us were dethroning the Patriots.
Right. So I will say they're meeting with the high possibility of ending up in the exceeding.
Exceeding, right. But the Cardinals, I think, are right there.
Right, because every time I'm like, oh, man, they're not quite what I thought. They come back and they do something like this today. And then I'm like, okay, well, they're right there. I think they're on the right path.
The Raiders beat the Broncos today in Las Vegas 37-12. Las Vegas, or the Raiders franchise, has been taking care of Denver recently, winning 5 straight at home against the Broncos. Where do we feel about these two AFC
All right,
West
so
teams?
Broncos are not meeting my expectations. I thought they were going to take a bigger step forward today. This was a frustrating one for them too, because they're down. I think it was maybe 13-6, and maybe it was 10-6, and Drew Lock runs into the end zone for a touchdown, and there was holding, and they called it on the wide receiver, and it was holding. However, the defensive back was not even trying to make a play on the ball. It wouldn't have affected the outcome. And instead of doing it, he just acts and throws his hands up and backs into the guy instead of trying to make the play, because he wasn't going to make the play. Well, they draw the flag. The next play, Drew Lock throws an interception in the end zone to the same guy. So
Game
huge
of inches,
swing.
game of
right,
seconds.
and next thing you know, they're down multiple scores, and that's it.
Well, I said
And it's tough because it was holding. It was holding.
if it is a penalty, you have to call it.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, though. I think Las Vegas is exceeding, and I
Yep.
think Denver is not meeting.
Right.
Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams come away with the victory 23-16 at home, and the Rams quietly are a better team this year than I expected. I
Yeah.
think LA is exceeding expectations.
Yeah, they're exceeding my
I believe
expectations.
I was thinking around 500 for them ish, like 7 or 8 wins, I think. And they're already at 6-3. They're
Right.
tied for first place.
Right.
So the Rams to me are exceeding expectations. They have now won 5 of their last 6 against Seattle, which is tough to believe,
Wow.
but it's true. Seattle, as we mentioned, we thought that they were the NFC contender for the Super Bowl, have now lost 2 in a row to teams that are good. So clearly they're having an issue. They're not playing down their competition. They're at least getting beat by good teams, but I expect Seattle to be better than Buffalo and the Rams. So
Right.
their 2 straight losses are a little bit of a head scratch. And only scoring 16 points, that defense can't do anything. I don't know. Seattle's definitely on the downswing, but I feel like overall they're probably meeting my expectations.
Yeah, I'd say in the big picture, they're probably meeting my expectation. However, in the prisoner of the moment, they're going to be below my expectations because they started off so strong. They were probably way above, and now they've fallen off. And I don't. I feel like they'll get it right and they'll be better, but yeah, I'd say they're slightly below, but still really close to meeting my expectations.
49ers visiting New Orleans. The Saints get the win 27-13. San Francisco drops their 3rd straight game. The Saints look like one of the better teams in the NFC now. They didn't at the beginning of the year, but at the moment they are clearly exceeding my personal expectations because I'm always down on the Saints and I'm always wrong, and it looks like I'm wrong again this year. 49ers, though, honestly, I don't even think they're meeting my expectations. I
No.
said
We
that
had
I
them
didn't
falling
think
off, but
they were going to be
they're
anywhere near as good as they were last year.
They're the worst team in the division.
Right. And now I don't think they're one of the worst teams in football.
No.
But
They'd be the best team in the NFC East.
it's true story.
Literally, by record, they would be the best team in the NFC East.
But I would say Saints exceeding, 49ers not meeting. They're failing to meet my
Right.
expectations.
Well, and I was just thinking, I was like, wait, it's crazy because, it feels like the Rams are the ones that are, I'm still thinking of, coming off the Super Bowl loss. No, it's the Niners, but they're just not that good.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's.
And to think, I'm not saying that the Chiefs didn't deserve it, but, the Niners were in a position to win the Super Bowl last year and pooped the bed.
Right.
Now, in part because you had Patrick Mahomes do Patrick Mahomes-like things.
Right.
But
So, let's talk about the teams on a bye before we finish with the Dolphins, Chargers. Or let's say Ravens, Patriots. Patriots are not meeting my expectations.
Patriots are below my expectations, and the Ravens are about my expectations.
I'd say, probably meeting. One meeting, one not meeting. The Monday night game, Vikings-Bears.
Vikings are below.
Below, not meeting, and Bears are probably right where we expected.
Probably a little worse than I expected. I thought they'd be a little bit better. I thought they were going to bounce back, especially with Foles at quarterback. I thought they'd be a little bit better.
I
than
had
they are.
Vikings, Bears, Packers, Lions. You had Vikings, Packers, Bears, Lions. So the Bears are probably right about where I expected them to be. They're 5-3, I think. So they win, beat the Vikings. You're 6-3. You're right
Right.
in the thick of things. I don't think they're a good
But see,
team.
here's the thing too. The
but-
way it's gone the last few weeks, though, I'm like, man, if the Vikings win this, they could win a few. They could win, have a good way, like last half the season, and they could get into the playoffs. And again, if they play hot enough to get into the playoffs, they're not a team I necessarily want to play.
Right.
But-
So my uncle actually says we both had the Rams last. So we had Seattle
Yeah,
first,
yeah,
and the Rams
think
last.
so.
So
Because
Rams
I
are
knew we were
exceeding
both-
expectations.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
must have the 49ers in third.
Right.
But they're still not meeting expectations
Right.
there.
Right.
Rams exceeding, 49ers not meeting. Cardinals and Seahawks probably right where we expected.
We thought we
them,
were
so-
high on the Cardinals, and I know I was high on the Seahawks.
So teams on bye, we kind of touched on the Jets. I thought they were the worst team in the NFL. They're not even meeting that, if that's possible. Cowboys way below expectations.
Yeah.
We both had them winning the NFC East.
and I know Dak is out.
but they were struggling
They're
even
so
with
much
him.
worse
It's-
than just Dak.
It's tough, yeah.
Like and they're a good enough team. Like there's no reason why they shouldn't be better than they are.
Right. Who else is on bye this week? No,
Chiefs.
The Chiefs are on bye, and they are meeting
I'd say meet
expectations. I
expectations.
think
They're really good.
we said we'd expect them to challenge for the AFC title
Right.
again. And
It's crazy. They only have one loss. It was at the Raiders, I believe, or it might have been at home against the Raiders.
It was, yeah.
But like one loss, and I'm like, oh man, like
Yeah,
what's
I know. right?
happening?
Oh gosh. Who's the other NFC team on a bye then this week? Oh, the Falcons.
Yeah. Not meeting.
Not meeting.
They're
I
worse.
think they're
Fired
worse.
their coach.
Yeah, they're worse than we expected. Thought they'd be better. Have the talent, just haven't been able to put it together.
Right.
So then last here is the Dolphins Chargers game, and because I'm in charge of things, I'm going to pull up the highlights.
Yeah. Dolphins are exceeding my expectations.
Yeah, and they're doing it in a fashion that honestly is something that they can kind of continue. When you find a no-name suffocating defense that likes to be aggressive and apply pressure, that's something you can keep up. Now, you're going to get burned every so often, absolutely. But they have now won 5 games in a row, first time since 2016 for that. They're 6-3, a game, well, really half game behind the Bills, who haven't had their bye yet. They're doing it with a rookie quarterback who's just making his third starts. He's 3-0. He did nothing really to help win the game against the Rams in his first start, but he has been part of the reason they've won the last 2 weeks, especially last week in Arizona. They're doing it with a bunch of no-names at running back. They were on essentially their 4th or 5th string running back this week. They benched their offseason signing Jordan Howard. He wasn't even active for the game despite not being injured. They went with Salvin Ahmed, I believe undrafted out of Washington.
It was.
Who was the backup to Myles Gaskin at Washington, who is out injured. They also have Matt Breida, who they traded for. He's injured. They brought in DeAndre Washington before the trading deadline, but he hasn't been active that much. And they've been using a no-name guy from last year, Patrick Laird, in that role as well. But they're also doing it with guys that they were told are not good football players just a few years ago.
Right.
You know, at the end of Adam Gase's tenure, or last year at the very beginning of Brian Flores's. So they started the season 1-3.
Right.
So they won 5 in a row. They benched Ryan Fitzpatrick when they got to 500. People thought they were crazy. I was
Including
kind
me.
of thinking that
I
as
thought
well.
They were crazy too.
And all they've done now is win 3 more in a row. And they've doing it all 3 phases of the game. And if you have good defense and special teams and you get good enough play on offense.
And I give them credit. I don't know that the market was there, but I bet it was. Like, I give them credit for not just shipping Fitzpatrick off and cutting ties with him, because like he's still a valuable asset to that team. And I felt bad for him in that spot, but yeah, this team has eyes on Tua in the future, and they felt this is what they needed to do for Tua in the future. So let's do it. And like we said, they're gonna have 3 picks in the top 40.
Right.
4
picks in the top 60-ish,
Yeah,
somewhere around
yeah.
the top 50, top 55, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
They're doing it with a
Man,
bunch of guys
just-
that people
and-
didn't want either.
Right. And that's going to just help. That gives you cap space. When you can build with top-end draft guys who are locked into those rookie deals,
Xavier Howard had another interception today.
Yeah.
I know last week people were, he had 3 or 4 pass interference penalties. It was against DeAndre Hopkins.
Right.
That counts as a win to me.
Right.
Like they're not like he wasn't giving up 40 yards. Like they were modest gains, 8, 10, 12, 15. Maybe there was a bigger one in there. One of them I thought was BS, but I'll take that because you have to make them earn it. Then you're not letting them. You're technically giving them free.
What was all the talk this week was for the Cardinals was we have to get Hopkins more involved because he only had a few catches last week.
Well, take away the Hail Mary. How involved was he this week?
They went his direction.
I know it's kind of more
a
of
little
question,
bit early, but that was.
I
his
know he
big
had
play.
over 100 yards, but that last play was 40 something yards.
45 yards or something like that.
So, but yeah, I wanted to take time to talk about my Dolphins here a little bit because they're getting it done and. The schedule sets up nicely for them. They go to Denver next week. They believe they go to the Jets the week after that. Then they host the Bengals. 3 winnable games.
And if they want to be the team that we're starting to think they are, like a playoff caliber team, they have to win those 3.
Right.
Like not 2-1.
No.
2-1 doesn't bury you. And honestly, I think 2-1 is more realistic because the team is set for a step back at some point, right? Like they've won 5 in a row. I think they win 8 in a row. Like, are they good enough? And just independently, are they good enough to win 8 in a row? I don't know that they're there yet. So if they went 2-1, I wouldn't be surprised, and that's not the end of the world. But if they want to be that team, then they should go 3-0 in that stretch.
I'm trying to think of who they play after the Bengals because I think there's a Raiders game in there, maybe. They play Buffalo, I think, the last week of the season. I believe they play New England the second to last week of the season.
Is that the Chiefs?
They have the Chiefs in there. There's someone else. I'm missing a team. I can't recall. But
could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way the schedule sets up, if they play the way they're playing now, where they're beating teams that are on their level or slightly below, they could easily go 10-6 or 11-5.
Right.
They're 6-3 right now. Can they go 4-3 in their last 7 games with the teams I just mentioned? They have to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm excited for the first time in a while because not only have the potential to make the playoffs this year, they're setting themselves up for the future because they don't have a lot of terrible contracts. The guys are still young and ready to go. Hopefully you have the quarterback. I know 3 games is a small sample size, and he isn't blowing the doors off like Burrow is, or the way everyone raves about Herbert, who still only has 1 win as a starter, but has looked good himself.
Right.
Or the second or third year quarterbacks.
Herbert is in a spot where he could very well be going again, getting a new coach next year, which I don't know that. It's tough because you look at this year and you're like, man, the Chargers, so many close losses,
yeah.
But it's not just this year; it's been a number of years,
right? So,
but
all right, but I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion. It was good to be back. It was good to talk NFL action. We will be back next week for episode 316. We'll recap and preview parts of NFL Week 11. We might be talking a little bit more betting information as we're going to welcome in a guest, Paul Roberts. If you are familiar with local Berks County sports personalities, media members, you'll know Paul. He's a great guy to follow on Twitter.
Oh, yes.
During professional sports, and he covers it all. Local college pro, and he's big into the betting scene now, and he talks about it all the time. Very active when key events are going on, and he does a great service to the local sports community.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to welcoming Paul on here via the May's Sandwich Shop hotline, and it just should be an all-around good time. But before we take off this evening, let's hear one more time from one of our sponsors, Small Player Big Play.
Ever wish there was a sports app just for you? Introducing Small Player Big Play app, the all-sports social media app for young athletes. Live stream events for your friends and family who can't be there. At home or at work, they can watch your streaming on their phones or on TV by using a mirroring device or AirPlay 2. Download the app from the App Store or Google Play and create an account using a valid email address. That's it. Now you can find friends, join groups, or make new ones. You can upload and watch your own content for free. Watch YouTube uploads for free. Even more streaming options are available with our subscription plans and in-app purchases. Download the app and start sharing with the world your passion for sports today.
All right, and we thank our sponsors, Mays Sandwich Shop and Small Player Big Play, for helping us out here at the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. So, Justin, any closing thoughts, anything to say before we get out of here?
No, I really have nothing to add. Hopefully, I don't even know what my hope is for the Eagles, but whatever.
Yeah. Trust me, my dad's been texting me a whole bunch that Dallas is playing for a better draft pick. He thinks the Eagles will be right there with him, but someone's got to win the division. So
NFC East could be all over that top half of the draft.
Maybe it could be the Giants. I don't know.
Giants could get done.
Like the winner of the NFC East is definitely going to be under 500, though, right?
Yeah, now.
I feel like they have to be.
To be honest, if the Eagles would have won today, they would have been at 500. They would have been 4-1.
Yeah.
So, like, I thought they had a shot at getting to 8 wins. Not a good one, but I thought they had a shot. You might be looking at 6 wins the division.
Oh, boy.
And depending on who it is, they might not have a win outside of the division. I'd have to look further at that.
And they get to welcome Tampa Bay. Crazy.
But how awesome would it be if
the NFC East team beats Tampa Bay?
A 6-9-1 Eagles team.
No, make it worse. 5-10-1.
5-10-1
wins
Eagles
the division
and beat the Buccaneers.
Beat the Bucs.
Oh
man.
Chalk it up to a successful season if that's what happens.
Hang the banner.
That's right. Get them rings again.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. This concludes episode 315 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. We'll be back next Sunday, November 22nd, same time, 8:30 Eastern on JMN JR Radio with our special guest, Paul Roberts. All right. Take it easy, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the Sunday and Monday night football games in Week 10.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.